You have met 1,000 people in your life. Maybe more. Be honest with yourself for a second. Right now, almost none of them can change your life. They are not bad people. They do not dislike you, but you keep meeting the wrong ones. And you keep meeting them for the same reason. You just never notice a pattern. Try this. Think of your last 20 conversations that actually mattered to you. 20 people you tried to impress. 20 people you wanted to remember you. Now ask yourself, how many of them could open a door for you? A door you could not open yourself? For most people, the answer is close to zero. And that number should bother you. Not because you failed at anything. Because it means you spent hundreds of hours, maybe thousands, on relationships that were never going to move you forward. You did not choose that on purpose. Nobody sits down and decides to waste a decade on the wrong circle. It happens quietly, one convenient conversation at a time, until one day you look up and realize the room around you never actually changed. This is not bad luck. This is not an accident. This is architecture. Your life has a structure. That structure was built by habits you never questioned. And that structure decides exactly who walks into your world and who never even sees you standing there. Picture two men in the same city, same age, same starting point. The first one spends his evenings at home, scrolling, waiting for something to change. The second one shows up. He picks the room on purpose, and he keeps showing up. 5 years pass. The first man is still waiting. The second man is standing next to people who can change his life with one sentence. Nothing separated them at the start. Everything separates them now. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago. He sat in exile, stripped of his position. He watched from a distance as lesser men occupied rooms he was no longer invited into. He did not waste his years complaining. He studied it instead. He wrote it down. He turned his own humiliation into a manual on power and proximity. Think about how unusual that reaction actually is. Most people who lose access to power spend the rest of their lives resenting the people who kept it. Machiavelli did the opposite. He treated his exile like a research assignment. He watched which families still received visitors and which ones had quietly gone silent. He noticed who was invited to dinner and who was politely, permanently left off the list. Out of that bitter observation came one of the most studied books on power ever written, and what he found was brutal. It still applies today, maybe more than ever. Power does not spread itself randomly. It follows law, not the law written in courtrooms, the law written into human nature, the law of who gets noticed, who gets trusted, who gets invited in, and who gets left standing at the door for their entire life, wondering why nothing ever changes. This video is not a motivational speech. It will not make you feel good for 5 minutes and then fade by tomorrow. It is a set of mechanisms, cold, repeatable, and quietly used by everyone who has ever built real influence, whether they admit it or not. Some of these laws will feel obvious once you hear them. That does not make them less powerful. Most truths that change a life were always obvious. Nobody was simply willing to look at them directly until now. Today, you learn 13 of those laws. Before the laws, accept something first. It will feel uncomfortable. If it does not, you have not really understood it yet. The right people are not missing from your life. They exist. They are closer than you think. Some are one introduction away right now. You keep meeting the wrong people for one reason only. Without realizing it, you are built to attract them. Think of gravity. A planet does not choose what it pulls toward itself. Its mass decides that automatically. Powerful people work the same way. They are not ignoring you out of cruelty. Your current presence simply does not generate enough pull. Nothing personal has happened here. This is physics, not persecution. Most people react to this truth in one of two ways. Some collapse into self-pity. They decide the game is rigged and they stop trying. Others do something worse. They start performing. They fake confidence. They buy things they cannot afford, just to look like people worth knowing. They talk louder in rooms where they should be listening. And every time, powerful people can smell it instantly. Performing proximity is the opposite of having it. Think of the man who walks into a room wearing a watch he cannot afford, dropping names he barely knows. Everyone in that room has met 100 versions of him before. They spot him in seconds, not because they are cruel, because a performance is louder than the substance, and substance is the only thing they are actually listening for. Now think of his opposite. Someone quiet, dressed simply, asking better questions than anyone else in the room. Nobody notices him for the first 10 minutes. By the end of the evening, he is the only person anyone remembers. That contrast is not an accident. It is the entire lesson of this video, compressed into one evening. Machiavelli would tell you neither response works. Self-pity keeps you exactly where you are. Performance gets you exposed and quietly filtered out. There's a third path. It is the only one that actually works. Stop trying to reach powerful people. Start becoming the kind of person powerful people reach for. That single shift is a foundation for everything that follows. Every law below builds that pull. None of them are about networking events. None of them are about elevator pitches or collecting business cards like trophies. They are about becoming someone whose presence changes the temperature of a room. Notice something important here. None of this requires money you do not have. None of it requires a family name, a university, or a head start you missed. It requires behavior. And behavior is the one thing that is always completely in your control. Let's begin. Law 1, the law of selective visibility. Here is something nobody tells you about powerful people. They are not looking for more access. They already have access to everything. What they want is relief. Relief from a noise of 1,000 people trying to reach them every single day. This means the moment you make yourself too easy to reach, you disqualify yourself. You become one more voice in an already deafening room. The people who actually get noticed are visible on their own terms, not available on everyone else's terms. There is a real difference between being seen and being accessible. A great painting is seen by thousands of people every day. It does not respond to any of them. It does not need to. Its value stands on its own. Learn to operate the same way. Show your work. Show your value. Show the results of your discipline. But stop making yourself instantly available to everyone who asks. Every time you drop everything to respond, you tell the room your time has no cost. And anything with no cost gets treated as if it has no value, no matter how good it actually is. Think about the two people replying to a message. One answers within seconds every time, no matter the hour. The other replies when it makes sense, calm and unhurried. Which one do you trust with something important? Which one seems like they have a life worth protecting? This does not mean disappearing. It means choosing where your energy lands. On purpose. Not for anyone who simply calls your name. There's a version of this law that feels almost rude the first time you practice it. You let a message sit for a few hours instead of answering immediately. You decline an invitation without over-explaining why. It feels wrong at first because you were taught that being helpful means being instantly available. But watch what happens over time. The people who respected you a little before now respect you more. And the people who only wanted your immediate attention quietly disappear. That is not a loss. That is the filter working exactly as it should. Machiavelli understood that a prince who is seen everywhere, doing everything, quickly becomes ordinary in the eyes of his own people. Familiarity, left unmanaged, breeds a quiet kind of contempt. The prince who is seen rarely but decisively remains a figure people study and wonder about. You do not need a throne for this principle to apply to you. Law 2, the law of scarcity perception. People do not value things based on real worth. They value things based on perceived scarcity. This is not cynical. It is simply how the human mind has worked for thousands of years. Anything abundant feels ordinary. Anything rare feels precious, even when both things are functionally identical. Powerful people live inside rooms full of abundance, abundant flattery, abundant requests, abundant people wanting something from them. In that environment, scarcity becomes the most valuable currency you can offer, not because you are manipulating anyone, because scarcity is the only signal loud enough to cut through the noise. This is why the person who says yes to everything gets forgotten, and the person who occasionally says no calmly, without explaining, becomes unforgettable. Saying no is not arrogance. It is information. It tells the room your attention runs on its own standard, not on whoever asks the loudest. Picture a dinner invitation sent to 20 people. 19 say yes immediately. One says simply, I can't make that one, but let's find another time. That single reply gets remembered longer than all 19 combined. Not because it was clever, because it was rare. Machiavelli warned rulers never to appear desperate for anything. Desperation broadcasts weakness faster than any words could. The same law governs relationships today. The moment you seem to need a connection more than it needs you, its value collapses in their mind, even if nothing changes on the surface. This does not mean rejecting people for the sake of appearing important. That is a shallow imitation of this law, and powerful people see through it just as easily. Real scarcity comes from having a full life already, from having standards you actually hold, not standards you perform. When your no is genuine, it carries weight. When it is theater, it collapses the moment someone tests it. Build a life full enough that saying no sometimes is simply true, not strategic. The moment scarcity becomes a costume you put on for effect, someone experienced will notice within minutes. Real substance cannot be faked convincingly for long, and neither can real scarcity. Law 3, the law of value before ask. Most people who enter a room full of powerful individuals are thinking the same silent question. What can I get from this person? And here is the uncomfortable truth. Powerful people sense that question forming behind their eyes before you say a word. They have spent decades being approached by people who want something. They develop the instinct the way a deer senses a predator in the tree line. The people who actually gain access ask a different question. Not what can I get, but what can I offer that this person does not already have enough of? It might be information. It might be an introduction. It might be a skill they lack. It might simply be silence and competence in a room full of people desperate to be noticed. This is not about becoming a servant. It is about sequence. Value creates trust. Trust creates access. Access creates opportunity. Skip the first step, and you are asking a stranger to hand you the third step for free. Nobody does that. Consider the assistant who quietly solves a problem before anyone asks her to. She says nothing about it. Weeks later, when she finally needs something, the door opens without hesitation. Compare that to the stranger who asks for a favor in the first 5 minutes of meeting someone. One built a foundation. The other built nothing at all. Study the people who move easily between powerful circles. They rarely ask for anything in the first few interactions. They deposit value quietly. They do not expect an immediate return. And by the time they finally do ask for something, the door is already open because the relationship has already proven its worth. This requires a shift most people never make. You have to stop measuring every interaction by what it gives you today. Some deposits take months to matter, some take years, but every single one compounds, quietly, in a ledger the other person keeps without ever telling you. Law 4, the law of the room you're not in. You cannot build gravity toward powerful people while spending all your time in rooms where nothing important happens. This sounds obvious, yet almost nobody audits their own environment honestly. Look at where you spend your evenings. Look at who you talk to most during your week. If those conversations rarely touch ambition, strategy, or growth, you are training your instincts inside a world that has nothing to do with the world you claim to want. Machiavelli studied the courts of Italy obsessively. He understood power moves through specific spaces. You cannot influence a room you never enter, and you will never enter certain rooms by accident. You have to engineer your way toward them, 1 degree of separation at a time. Think about the last conference class or gathering you almost skipped because it felt inconvenient. Somewhere in that room was a conversation that could have changed something. You will never know because you stayed home instead. That is the quiet cost nobody puts on a calendar. This does not mean abandoning people who matter to you. It means becoming disciplined about your hours, the events you attend, the platforms you build a presence on, the conversations you choose over the ones you scroll past. Every hour spent in a low-value room is an hour stolen from your future. Do an honest audit tonight. List of 5 places you spend the most time. Ask yourself, plainly, whether any of them could realistically connect you to someone who changes your trajectory. If the answer is no, 5 times in a row, you already know exactly why your circle has not moved in years. This is uncomfortable to hear because it puts the responsibility back on you, not on your city, not on your industry, not on bad timing. You chose these rooms, even if you never called it choice. And if you chose them once, without thinking, you can choose differently now, on purpose. Law 5. The law of silence is currency. In a world addicted to noise, silence has become rare, and rare things carry power. Watch how the most respected people in any room behave. They rarely speak first. They rarely fill every pause with their own voice. They let information land before they offer an opinion. This is not passivity. This is control. The person who speaks least, while clearly understanding everything happening around them, gets read as the most dangerous person in the room. Not because silence itself has magic, because silence reveals discipline. And discipline is exactly what powerful people are scanning for. Most people feel silence out of anxiety. They cannot sit inside a pause, so they rush to speak, often saying something forgettable, just to escape the discomfort. Powerful people notice this instantly. They file it away as insecurity. Fair or not, watch a negotiation sometime. The person who talks the most is usually the one who ends up conceding the most. The person who waits, who lets the silence stretch a little longer than feels comfortable, almost always gets the better terms. Silence is not empty. It is pressure, and pressure works in your favor if you can hold it. Learn to sit inside silence without flinching. Let others rush to fill it. When you finally speak, speak with precision. Now, every word carries the weight of everything you chose not to say before it. Practice this somewhere small first. In a normal conversation, let a pause last 2 full seconds longer than feels natural. It will feel unbearable the first few times. Then it will feel like power, because you will notice something. The other person almost always speaks next, and they almost always reveal more than they intended to. Law 6. The law of strategic distance. There is a paradox at the heart of proximity to power. The people who chase influential individuals too closely, too quickly, get pushed away the fastest. The people who maintain careful, deliberate distance get pulled in. Machiavelli observed this among rulers constantly. Getting too close, too fast, makes you look hungry, and hunger repels. Maintaining distance while staying visible makes you look self-sufficient, and self-sufficiency attracts. Strategic distance means you do not chase every chance to be near someone influential. You let relationships develop at their own pace. You resist the urge to overcommunicate, to send 5 follow-up messages, to insert yourself into every conversation. Distance creates curiosity. Curiosity creates pursuit, and pursuit, coming from them instead of you, changes the entire balance in your favor. Think of the person who messages a new contact 5 times in 1 week. Each message a little more eager than the last. Now think of the person who sends 1 thoughtful message and then simply waits. Only one of them gets a reply that actually means something. This law is uncomfortable. It requires patience. And patience is the one resource ambitious people always run short on. But rushing proximity almost always destroys it before it has a chance to mature. Think of it like a fire. Feed it too much fuel too quickly and it chokes itself out. Feed it steadily, patiently, and it grows into something that lasts. Relationships with powerful people behave exactly the same way. Law 7. The law of the middleman. Very few people gain direct access to powerful individuals on their first attempt. The ones who succeed almost always go through a trusted third party, someone who already has credibility with the person they want to reach. This is why cultivating relationships with connectors matters more than obsessing over the powerful individual directly. A well-placed introduction from a trusted source carries more weight than 100 cold attempts at contact. Machiavelli understood intermediaries intimately. He served as one himself for much of his political career. The middleman does not need to be powerful. They need to be trusted by people who are. Your task is to become someone worth vouching for. So when a connector mentions your name, that mention carries automatic credibility. Think about how job offers actually happen. Rarely through a cold application into a black hole. Almost always through someone who already knows both sides and is willing to say quietly, you should talk to this person. That single sentence does more work than 100 emails ever could. Stop obsessing over reaching the top of the mountain directly. Study who already stands halfway up it. Build a relationship there first, based on real value, not transactional hope. Ask yourself who already knows the person you want to reach. Not a celebrity, not a stranger online. Someone real, already in your extended circle, 1 or 2 steps removed. That person is far more reachable than you think, and far more useful than you have given them credit for. Most people overlook their own extended network entirely. They chase strangers online, while ignoring the acquaintance 3 conversations away who already has the exact connection they need. Map your circle honestly before you go looking outside it. Law 8, the law of earned proximity. Access given to easily gets trusted the least. This sounds counterintuitive, but think about your own instincts. If a stranger treats you like a close friend immediately, does it feel earned or does it feel unsettling? Powerful people feel the exact same discomfort when someone offers instant closeness with no history behind it. Proximity gets earned through demonstrated reliability over time. This means showing up consistently, following through on small commitments, proving through repeated interaction that you are exactly who you present yourself to be. There is no shortcut here. Time itself is part of the mechanism. Most people try to skip this process because they are impatient, and impatience shows from a mile away. The person willing to build trust slowly, without forcing the relationship faster than it wants to move, is the one who eventually earns access that cannot be revoked, because it was never handed out carelessly in the first place. Think of a new employee who tries to act like a partner in their first week. Now think of the one who quietly does excellent work for months before ever asking for more responsibility. Only one of them gets handed the keys, and it is never the one in a hurry. This is frustrating to hear if you are impatient. But impatience was never rewarded in circles built on trust. Reliability is. And reliability can only be proven the same way it has always been proven, one small moment at a time, repeated until it becomes undeniable. Law 9, the law of the long game. Almost everyone measures relationships by what they produce this month, this quarter, this year. This short horizon is exactly why most people never build meaningful connections to power. Real influence compounds over years, sometimes decades, and the people who understand this invest in relationships long before those relationships pay any visible return. Machiavelli spent years building alliances that took an entire political lifetime to mature. He understood power is not captured in a single transaction. It is built through a long accumulation of trust, favors, and reputation, layered on top of each other until the structure holds real weight. If you only invest in a relationship for as long as it takes to see an immediate benefit, you will never build anything that lasts. The people who eventually surround themselves with genuine power are the ones willing to plant seeds they did not expect to harvest for years, sometimes without ever announcing they were planting anything at all. Think of the friendship you kept for no reason at all, just because you liked the person, with no plan behind it. Years later, that same person becomes exactly the connection you needed, at exactly the moment you needed it. That was never luck. That was patience, quietly compounding in the background. This is why the long game feels invisible while you are inside it. Nothing seems to be happening. Then one day it all arrives at once, and it looks to everyone else like a sudden break. It was never sudden. It was simply delayed on purpose until the moment it was ready. Most people quit relationships too early, for the same reason they quit everything too early. They cannot see the return yet, so they assume there is no return coming. Machiavelli warned that fortune rewards those who prepare long before fortune ever shows up. Relationships work by that exact same clock. Law 10, the law of reciprocal debt. There is an old, quiet principle that governs elite circles. A small, unpaid debt of gratitude creates a stronger bond than a large, immediately repaid one. When you do something valuable for someone and refuse to let them repay you right away, you create a quiet tension, and that tension keeps you present in their mind far longer than a closed transaction ever could. This is not manipulation in the cruel sense. It is an understanding of how obligation works between people. People remember, consciously or not, who they owe something to. That quiet sense of owing pulls them back toward continued connection and continued opportunity to eventually settle the balance. Picture 2 colleagues. One does a favor and immediately asks for something equal in return. The other does a favor and waves off any repayment entirely. Only one of them stays in the other person's mind for months afterward, quietly waiting for the right moment to reconnect. Powerful people are surrounded by others constantly trying to extract immediate value from them. The person who gives generously, without rushing to collect, becomes memorable precisely because they behave differently from everyone else competing for the same attention. Let the debt exist. Let it breathe. It will pull them back toward you long after a settled transaction would have been forgotten. This is not about keeping score in secret. Waiting to cash in a favor like a weapon. That poisons the whole principle. The debt has to be genuinely released, not simply delayed. The pull it creates only works if it is real. The moment someone senses you are quietly tracking what they owe you, the entire dynamic collapses into something transactional and cold. True generosity has to feel effortless from the outside, even when it was deliberate on the inside. Law 11, the law of reading intentions. Every powerful person you will ever meet has developed a finely tuned instinct for hidden motives. They have been approached too many times by people smiling warmly while calculating what they could extract. This means your success in these circles depends on your ability to read the same signals in reverse, and to make sure your own intentions are honestly examined first. Machiavelli's core insight was never that deception is always necessary. It was that clarity about motive, yours and everyone else's, separates the strategist from the fool. If you walk into a relationship uncertain about what you actually want, that uncertainty leaks out in small ways, hesitations, contradictions, overcompensation, and it registers instantly with anyone experienced enough to notice. Think of the person who cannot explain clearly why they want to meet someone influential. They stumble, they over-explain. Now think of the person who says, plainly, exactly what they hope to build and why. Confidence is not a performance here. It is simply the natural result of already knowing the answer. Before you enter any room with someone influential, know precisely what you are offering. Know what you are hoping for eventually. Know what you are not willing to trade for it. This internal clarity radiates outward as confidence. And confidence is one of the few signals that cannot be faked for very long. Write it down beforehand if you need to. What do you actually want from this relationship? In plain words. Most people never do this exercise, and it shows the moment they are asked a direct question they cannot answer honestly. Law 12, the law of the inner circle filter. Every powerful person operates with a filtering system, whether they designed it consciously or not. New people get tested, often without knowing they're being tested at all, before they're allowed past a certain threshold of trust. Understanding this filter exists changes how you behave in early interactions completely. The filter usually measures a handful of things. Do you exaggerate your own importance? Do you speak poorly about people who are not present? Do you follow through on small promises? Do you keep your composure when things do not go your way? These small moments, invisible to most people, decide whether you get quietly promoted toward the inner circle or quietly filtered out of it forever. Think about how someone treats a waiter, a driver, or an assistant when they think nobody important is watching. That single moment tells a powerful observer more than an entire hour of polished conversation. The filter is rarely a question. It is almost always a quiet observation. This means every interaction, even the small ones, is an audition. Treat the assistant with the same respect you show the executive. Handle a small disappointment with the same grace you will want to be seen handling a large one. The filter is always running, whether you can see it or not. And the people who pass it are rarely the loudest people in the room. They are the most consistent ones. You will never know exactly when you are being tested. That is the point. Behave as if every moment counts. Because for the people who decide who enters their circle, every moment actually does. This filter is not cruelty. It is protection. Powerful people have been burned before by someone who looked perfect on the surface and turned out to be careless underneath. The filter exists because the cost of trusting the wrong person at their level is far higher than the cost of yours. Respect the filter, and eventually, it will work in your favor instead of against you. Law 13, the law of becoming someone worth knowing. Every law before this one is a technique. This final law is a foundation beneath all of them. Without it, None of the others hold any real weight for very long. You cannot permanently fake your way into rooms you have not earned. Even if you succeed temporarily through clever positioning, the gap between your performance and your actual substance eventually surfaces. And when it does, every door that opened through technique closes through substance. This means the deepest work is not learning how to approach powerful people more effectively. It is becoming the kind of person who generates their own gravity, independent of anyone else's validation. Build skill relentlessly. Build discipline that does not need an audience to sustain itself. Build a reputation, brick by brick, based on actual results, not borrowed credibility. Think of the two versions of yourself. One spends years learning how to talk about success. The other spends years actually building it, quietly without an audience. Only one of them can walk into any room, anywhere, and still feel like they belong there. Machiavelli understood, more than almost anyone in history, that true power is never permanently borrowed. It is built slowly through demonstrated capability, until eventually the powerful stop being people you have to strategically approach, and start being people who strategically approach you. This is a quiet secret behind every one of the 12 laws before it. None of them work as a shortcut around substance. They only work as an amplifier for substance that already exists. Try to use them without building anything real underneath, and eventually the gap shows. Build the substance first, and every other law becomes almost effortless. Look back at everything you just learned. Notice the pattern underneath all 13 laws. None of them are about becoming louder, more aggressive, or more desperate for attention. Every single one is about becoming more disciplined, more patient, and more genuinely valuable than the crowd competing for the exact same rooms you want to enter. This is why most people never break through. Not because the laws are secret, not because powerful people are impossible to reach, but because almost nobody is willing to do the quiet, unglamorous work of becoming someone worth knowing before demanding to be known. That work has no audience. Nobody applauds you for reading a room correctly, or for waiting patiently instead of chasing. Nobody posts about the debt you refuse to collect on, or the silence you sat inside without flinching. This entire path is built in private, long before anyone in public ever notices a result. You have spent your entire life meeting the wrong people, not because the right ones do not exist, but because your own gravity was not strong enough to pull them into your world. That changes the moment you stop performing proximity and start building substance. It changes the moment you understand that scarcity, patience, and quiet competence will always outperform noise, desperation, and performance. The rooms you want to enter are not guarded by luck. They are guarded by law, and now you know 13 of them. You do not need to apply all 13 tomorrow. Pick one, the one that made you slightly uncomfortable while you were watching. That discomfort is not an accident. It is pointing directly at the exact place your own architecture needs to change first. 500 years from now, someone may still be studying the same patterns you just learned tonight. That is how durable these laws actually are. They did not come from a trend or an algorithm or a fleeting piece of advice. They came from centuries of watching exactly how power moves between people and refusing to look away from what was actually happening. If this video shifted the way you see your own relationships, don't just scroll past it. Like this video. Drop a comment telling me which strategy hit you the hardest, and subscribe, because every video on this channel is built to sharpen your mind and separate you from the crowd that stays comfortable. No fluff, no noise, just doctrine. Most people don't lose this game. They just never played it.